Got it.
All right. All right. Well, welcome back, Ram
Thank you.
Dass. I think you're one of my only repeat guests so far. So
Honored to be that.
yeah, I'm so glad you decided to come back. At the time that we did it last time, you hadn't released your own music. You had, of course, released many other people's music that you had been part of. But you are now creating some really beautiful music that features your name first, which is
Yeah.
pretty exciting. Let's talk about that and how that came to be.
Sure. So yeah, thanks for having me back. Always love talking to you. And yeah, I guess the last time we talked, I guess it was over a year ago or something. It was a while ago. Um, and essentially, I've produced for so many people, and I like being in the studio is where I love to be. I really, really love the recording process and the editing and mixing and everything that goes into audio production, music production. So, I didn't have something to say. It was like I wanted to put out something that felt um, valuable to me, and I'm not a prolific songwriter. I don't sit down and put down lyrics. Like I have so many friends and colleagues who do, where that's their bread and butter. They love sitting and writing, and I'm really not that way. I don't really like using words that much. I find that words, and of course this podcast is going to be like an antithesis to that, but words words last forever, and like I don't know how I'm going to feel about the statement that I'm making in a song. Um, and frankly, I don't value my own words uh, in a way that feels like um, I just didn't feel like writing songs. Essentially, long story short, it's
This
just
sounds
not.
like my disclaimer about why I don't like playing live.
Oh well, we can
Like,
get
well, I
into
don't
that
do
too.
this or but like basically, I mean, you do what you're good at, right? And you're really good at recording.
Thanks. Yeah, I
Yeah.
love recording. I love I don't know. I love powerful feelings. I love how music makes me feel, and I like finding that feeling in the recording process. Um, and honestly, Mati and Bogdan from Aware, they're kind of the first people that I've found where I really actually enjoy playing music. This sounds really um, bad considering that music is my entire profession, but I maybe like you, like I don't like live performance that
Mm-hmm.
much. Well, at least when it's my own stuff. I don't want to be a pop star
Mm-hmm.
in the traditional sense. Um, I like the music. I think the music is inspiring, and we basically sat down and came up with structure for a number of pieces, much like you would do with a jazz tune, where it's like, okay, we mapped out where the changes are, basically where the chord changes are, and in some cases what the melody is. Um, but then we gave ourselves a ton of room to improvise, and everything that we put on the EP is live takes. So what we would do is we'd
Oh,
lay
wow.
down a programmed drum beat that was all actually analog. It was not like done with a computer. We actually sat there with the drum machine and programmed a beat that became our click track.
Mm-hmm.
And then Bogdan and I would be in one room and Mati would be in another, and we recorded live. So what you're hearing is that magic of a live recording, that it's like why people go to concerts, because it's music is this uh, communication. It's a dialogue and a conversation that happens, in my opinion, best when it's done in the moment.
Mm-hmm.
So we captured that, but we still got it in a studio environment. So it's sort of old school and new school all at the same time.
Yeah, that's really cool. So when you say
Yeah.
different rooms, like you're listening to each other, you're that's separated by glass or something, you can see each other.
Well, it's a little more guerrilla than that because we
Okay.
were basically in a concrete apartment in Tulum.
Oh,
So,
okay.
yeah, so Bogdan and I were literally sitting in the kitchen slash dining room of this apartment, and
Uh-huh.
then Mati was in the bedroom. So we had a cement wall and a door between us.
Wow.
So there's full sound separation, but we were listening on headphones.
Were you in the middle of the jungle? Because like there is so few place. I'm gonna say I don't think I found a place here that would be silent enough to record. How did you do that?
We there's a place in La Veleta, on the south side of town that we
That's
found
where
is
I
really
live.
quiet, and yeah, it's I love it over there.
Yeah, me too.
So it's a place called Niwa,
Okay.
and I've done 3 or 4 different sets of recordings there now in different apartments, but
Hmm,
all in the same little complex. Um,
cute.
so yeah, it's super nice. There's a pool, so the kids can come and uh, hang out and play some of the evenings, and we get family dinners together. But then we get
Oh,
to record. And
you're they have kids?
Bogdan has 2 small children and a an older daughter. Mati does not have any kids.
Oh, gotcha.
But yeah, Bogdan and his wife and kids will come over and we'll all party in the pool.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Where, not where. How did you meet? Well, I guess where too. Like, how did you meet Bogdan and Mati?
I met Bogdan at the second Satnam Fest Mexico in Tepoztlan,
Oh, okay. So this was like
which was
long time
actually,
ago.
yeah, it was a long time ago. I think it was right before, no, it was right after he and his wife, now wife, started dating.
Oh,
So they were just getting to know each other then, or had just gotten together. And then Mati, I didn't actually meet him until like days before we started recording this EP together. Um,
okay.
but I had heard him sing on a number of tracks by Mardeleva, which is Eduardo Castillo's group that was with Mati and Bogdan. So there's a track called Love Song that was also part of a live set, and I played it on repeat. It's so beautiful, and that I really fell in love with what Mati does because he's singing without real words. So
Hmm.
it takes care of my uh, thing where it's like I don't want this to be about the words, but you're still feeling like he's saying something, and you can hear that he's telling a story. It's just not in a language that we all know.
Okay, so Mati is the singer.
Yeah.
Bogdan
Bogdan
played.
plays violin, he does drum programming, he does percussion, he played electric guitar on Heart Takes Flight. He's a multi instrumentalist like me.
Wow. So that's super trusting because I mean, I always feel like tracks tend to be voice forward,
Right.
you know, and so you just met this, but you'd heard him before.
I'd heard him before, and uh, Bogdan and Mati play in these workshops where they combine breath work with
Mm.
with music. And we met in a cave in the middle of the jungle in a cenote, and we played for one of these workshops, and it was
Oh.
just like it was so easy and so obvious uh, how good it was going to be. So yeah, but it's like my whole thesis is that collaboration works better than being a solo person, um, which again I'm a hypocrite for saying in a way because there's one track on the EP that is just me. But it's like I do have more fun, and I think the music is better, and music is better when it's a conversation, when it's a collaboration, and when honestly everyone gets to be themselves artistically. So I really didn't put a whole lot of boundary on what I wanted from either of them. it was about finding a feeling for each of us that felt good and going forward with that.
Yeah. That's a really cool process. How you described it, like basically just sort of a loose structure, no vocal framework.
Yep. Yep.
um, that's super cool. But also I would imagine presents its own challenges because you're also having to remember what that structure is and like create dynamics around that without really knowing
Right.
where the song is going, right? Like,
Right. Exactly. Which basically, as a musician, as a backing musician, this is what I've been training for my entire career. Essentially, it's just about listening and then following some sort of impulse that you are communicating to each other. We're going there now, aren't we? Yeah, okay, let's go there. Or you find that one person starts going, but there's a pullback, there's a tension,
mm-hmm.
and that brings its own quality to the music too.
Yeah.
So it's just about listening to each other and yeah, trusting each other that we all know what we're doing. We all believe and know that the other musicians are amazing. So we can sit back and enjoy it essentially.
Yeah.
So this was the least stressful recording project I've ever been in. It was the most fun I've ever had, and I'm chuffed that it's my own music. But it's something that it just came from a good feeling, essentially.
Yeah. And did you say it was one take as well, or did you guys give yourselves a few times to go through it?
We did multiple takes. We did multiple takes for each piece, and each one's different. But I did not ultimately cut between different takes
Okay.
in picking what I wanted to go on the EP. I
Gotcha.
picked a take, and worst case, we would chop out some sections that just went on too long or had some flub in it that didn't fit. So yeah, it's live, slightly truncated generally.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. That's really cool. I don't think I've ever heard somebody describe their recording process that way. Was this sort of like a revelation? Like, hey, let's try this, or how did that idea come about?
I don't know how much we thought about it. I think it's just that Bogdan and I have worked together on a number of projects before. I try to get him to play on just about anything that I work on.
Mm-hmm.
There's a way that he plays that's just so emotional and so captivating and brings textures to the forefront that I haven't found anywhere else and frankly don't want to because it's so much fun working with him. But it's like we've tracked on so many projects and we realized pretty quickly that the first couple takes that we do, if we run through a piece, we've got it. Generally, you get the best results in the first one or two takes because you're not thinking.
Mm-hmm.
As soon as you start thinking about what you're playing, that's when the feeling leaves and the music becomes less interesting.
Mm-hmm.
So I think just based on those experiences, we just said, well, this is basically how the piece goes. Let's play through and see how it feels. And because Matti and Bogdan also do so much improvisation in the breath workshops, they already are in that frame of reference. Me coming from playing mantra music with Sonatum and you and Narinjan and Jai Jagdish, we're essentially doing a similar thing because we have the mantra on repeat. So we're trying to find ways to keep it interesting, keep it musical.
Mm-hmm.
So I think we just arrived at the same thing, just from different avenues.
Yeah.
Essentially. Yeah.
Yeah, that's really cool. I wouldn't have actually guessed that that was your recording technique, like having listened to it. So I find that really intriguing too, because
Cool.
it doesn't have that kind of like, I guess when you listen to an improvised jazz piece, the recording kind of sets you up to feel like you're in an auditorium or like in a cafe or something like that. And for this, it's much more intimate.
Right.
You feel, yeah.
Right. There are a number of records that used a similar process. I mean, it's like this is more traditional, like recording to tape style.
Mm-hmm.
Before we got Pro Tools, before we got digital recording, tape is precious, studio time is precious. So getting the band in a studio together with hopefully some sound separation between the rooms, or between the players, you would knock out some takes. And so, like, I think about like Louie Louie, classic pop um, song of the era. Like, that was all done live. And I think there were some things where the singer messed up or whatever, but it's just like you can't cut it together with a different take. The producer just said, nope, that's the one, and you do it.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a similar mentality in the sense that we just wanted the raw expression that happened in the moment. And then, of course, we had the opportunity to overdub some elements on it. So we were able to put harmony vocals on.
Mm-hmm.
I got Jared May to play bass on a couple of the tracks after the fact. I added electric guitar to a couple of the tracks once we played. So it's like taking the best of the live studio technique, but then getting to use modern recording techniques too.
Yeah. So you did all the live stuff in Tulum, and then you traveled with it and were able to gather people.
Yeah. Well, barely traveled just because it was COVID. I mean,
oh yeah, well
it's
that,
like,
yeah.
hey Jared, can you record on this? Hey man, sure. This is great. 2 nights later, here you go. So, yeah, I mean, the internet is wonderful for music.
Yes, the internet has replaced traveling.
Yeah,
for
but
sure.
I will say it's like it works when the people that you're working with understand what you're doing and are treating it with the same sort of I don't want to say preciousness, but value, the same sort of sacredness that we come to it with, so that it doesn't. I really didn't want it to feel like a job for anyone. I wanted everyone to bring their artistry to it.
Gotcha. Yeah. Well, it's lovely. I haven't heard the whole thing yet because it's not out, right? Not the whole thing.
Yeah, there's
That's coming
2
out
more
December
tracks
3rd.
that'll be out soon. Yeah.
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 Well, so look forward to that. That'll be really cool. And it's been how many years since the Alchemist's Prayer?
That was 2011, so it's been 10 years.
10 years. Wow.
Yeah. Yeah. And, that was me then in a way. It was the community that I was playing in, the mantra world. And I got to kind of orchestrate it in a way that was mine. But this music feels very authentic to me in a way that I feel mostly disconnected from that record.
Yeah. Do you think that that's just also, because I know a lot of things have happened with around the mantra stuff. So I definitely feel that about music I've recorded too. But I also wonder, I mean, it has been 10 years. So I wonder if people who have recorded something 10 years ago generally feel a little bit disconnected from the person that they were 10 years
I
prior.
can only imagine that that's the case. I mean, James Taylor has been singing Fire and Rain for what, how many years now? 40, 50? Like,
yeah.
I think if you're lucky, you get to find new meaning in the music. For me, I feel like I'm just starting in a way. Like that album feels like a different person made it entirely. And I feel like I have a new career now, knowing what I know now, being who I am now, and I can make music that feels like something of mine. Whereas that was very much, it was made in the mindset that I was in then, which is super different from
Mm-hmm.
how it is now.
Yeah. We were talking last time. So I'm remembering it was actually before the pandemic. So it was a little over a year.
Wow, it's been a while.
Yeah. We were talking about the ceremonies that you were going to, the Native American ceremonies in is it the Bay Area?
Yeah.
Yeah. Are you still doing that?
I am. I would say that my relationship with all of it is changing as well. I mean, obviously, the pandemic made it so that we're not gathering in the same place.
Mm-hmm.
And, ceremony is about people coming together. But I think also there was a whole crisis that I went through that led me to those ceremonies and to plant medicine in general. And I think I really needed that to get to a place of finding myself and figuring out who I am. And I think what I've learned over the past few years is I'm good. Like, I know who I am. I struggle with all the things that people struggle with, for sure. Um, but I feel like I have a toolkit now
Mm-hmm.
that I know I can call on, I know I can use. And that does include plant medicines. It's totally within that. And like this music was created with the help of those. Um, it's definitely a ceremonial setting that we created to make the music. Uh, but I feel like part of what I learned is to live my life too. It's
Mm-hmm.
like um, I needed that deep dive in order to be able to live my life, and now I'm living my life first and foremost. And when I need help, I'll turn to that or other things.
Yeah, I haven't been in a setting where that has become an option for me, but it's very intriguing to me. It's fun. I don't usually use that word. I've used that word like a lot of times in this podcast already. Intriguing, very intriguing, Rhonda.
When you say turn to that, what do you mean by that?
Oh, well, like, so here in Tulum, there are a lot of, I feel like I'm continually in places where, I could do an ayahuasca ceremony, I
Mm-hmm.
could do combo, I could do things, but nothing has really, when something just grabs you and you're like, okay, this is what I'm doing right now.
Yeah.
That hasn't occurred for me.
Right.
So I'm totally open to it, but I hear a lot of, I hear a lot of good things. And
Yeah.
also something similar to what you said, sort of like, it's necessary for a time and then maybe you don't need it and then maybe you do. And then, um,
Yeah.
yeah, go ahead.
I mean, it's like it's help. So, and it's a relationship. All of the teaching is that all of these plant medicines are essentially entities that you can have relationships with.
Mm.
And just like any relationship, you're going to have times when you're super intimate with it and times when you're off doing something else. And for me, I actually feel like I've maintained an intimacy with the medicines that I partake of without actually needing to have them in my body. It's sort of like I've learned what I've needed so far to take care of the things in my life. And now I don't feel like I need to uh, partake of them so often in order to maintain my life. Like I'm not in a debt to my life anymore, essentially, unless I put myself there, and then I can use some help. But it's like it's that sort of interaction where, like I'm really after coming out of 3HO and Kundalini Yoga, it's really important to me right now that I understand for myself that my value in the world is not performative.
Mm.
So I'm not going to ceremony because I want to look a certain way or um, or any social reason.
Mm.
Like it needs to be for me about my interaction with myself and what I'm going through,
Mm.
rather than needing to uh, appear to be a certain way to others.
Yeah.
So it's super personal, and it's just like when it feels right, and I validate that. I encourage that.
Yeah. It also sounds like your your relationship with that is that it becomes its own guide, so you can call upon it whenever, right?
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And it's amazing because these medicines do create neurogenesis and neuroplasticity. So if you have trauma in your past, or um, you're going through something intense, like, it does create space in your body, in your nervous system, and in your brain to get out of fight or flight and get into the present moment,
Mhm.
so you can actually feel things. It may be because of my history within, a very stressful community,
Mm.
that, like, how to say this? Basically, yeah, I don't know. It's like it helps for those things, essentially, and now I can do my life. I think I lost the train of thought a little bit there, but
It's all the train of thought. The theme here is you, so you're
great. I'm still
still
here.
on. You're
I'm
still
still
on
here.
board.
Yeah.
um, I'm I'm curious because also our talk was pre-pandemic. Our talk was pre shit hitting the fan
Yeah.
in the 3HO Kundalini Yoga world, and you just um, when you were calling it a stressful community, is that something you would have said back then, or is that sort of a realization post kind of
I think I
feeling?
would have wanted to call it that, but I feel like I have space now to say, without social retribution, that it's like, yeah, things were not okay.
Yeah.
Um, and I know I faced all sorts of um, PTSD type uh, body states, um, as a result of being raised in the community that I was raised in,
Mm-hmm.
and certain codependent tendencies, and certain uh, ways of thinking about myself and others that were not healthy because of the ways that the community was.
Mm.
Um, so yeah, I feel like I have a lot more permission to just be myself, honestly, and
Yeah.
yeah, I feel like this music actually is part of that,
Yeah.
or my ability to make it is thanks to having gone through that.
Yeah. Yeah. I have you heard the Jewel podcast with Joe Rogan?
I've been pointed to it a couple
It's
times.
like
I'm honestly like the busiest guy on the planet, so I rarely have time to listen to
pretty
things,
long. It's
but
pretty
but
long, but
it's on my list.
yeah, I mean, if you do, it's well worth it. But one of the things that's just so incredible about that, kind of speaking to your point there about needing to go through things to become who you are. I mean, the things that that woman has gone through and overcome, I could not even fathom someone coming out the other end and going, I still want to have an open heart. I still want to, it was
Yeah,
pretty amazing.
right. And honestly, I mean, like, that's what I learned through the plant medicine, is
Mm,
actually that's who I am. Is
mm,
like, I really care about people. I really care about my life. I really care about other people's lives, and I'm going to put that at the forefront of my life, regardless of what I'm doing or what's happening to me.
mm.
Um, and I really appreciate it when other people do that too. It's very reassuring.
Yeah. Yeah. I suppose it's not such a, what you say, it's not such a surprising takeaway from your life, but it is, I feel like, not the road most frequently traveled when having experienced a lot of trauma or having experienced a lot of hardship, because,
Certainly. I mean, I could be really bitter and cynical about all
yeah.
of this, but it's just like, I see these tendencies when power structures exist with humans, and this is what happens with power structures, and there's manipulation and abuse, and humans do that, and that doesn't mean that I can't love people and not do that myself. Like,
Right.
that to me is the solution, rather than just being hateful about the people who don't behave well.
Yeah. Well said. Do you want to talk about like some of the things that occurred to you kind of as a result of this whole thing? Were there, besides wanting to get out of it, in a loving way, but I mean, were there
Sure.
things that just were kind of aha moments? Did you know kind of in your heart that it was happening all along, or like how did that process for you?
Yeah, I think I remember early on, like, I must have been 20-ish when I really remember. Well, there was this thing that happened. I went to Ireland. I was still wearing a turban. I was still very much a part of 3HO, um, at least in performance. Again, the performative aspect. Um, I went to a pub in Killarney, Ireland, and the doorkeeper guy said, "You can't come in if you're wearing a hat." And I said, "Well, I'm not wearing a hat. It's religious." And he said, "I understand, but you can't come in." Um, and I had been discriminated against before, in the States, and called out, especially after September 11th, wearing a turban, being called Osama, and all sorts of terrible things. Um, but I realized that I actually cared about hearing the music much more than I cared about wearing the turban.
Mm,
And that was a really important thing. I didn't realize it at the time, but looking back on it in retrospect, I realized, oh my God, this is supposed to be a belief that I have, but I don't have this belief.
mm,
Like, this is a costume, essentially. Um, and I think the reality of most of my childhood into young adulthood is that I wore the costume, I looked the look, I believed in the good behavior, in the serving other people, treating everyone as equals. Like, I got that.
mhm,
But at the same time, then I wear my head, like, I wear my hair uncut, and I wear this turban, and we say that we're kings and queens, and we're basically saying we're above other people even though we're equals with them. That's wrong to me.
yeah,
Like, for me,
yeah.
that's not something that I could do in a good way. So I took off my turban. I still didn't cut my hair until only a couple of years ago, a few years ago. But it was really important. I started walking around the Bay Area not wearing a turban, and it was awesome and terrifying because people on the street were not noticing me. I used
Mm,
to
mm,
get looks all the time,
mm,
whether positive or negative. I was getting attention.
right.
And after I stopped wearing a turban, I became invisible,
Mm,
essentially. I became another white boy with long hair, which is very common in the Bay Area.
mm,
And I think that was really helpful for me to, like, get this reality check of my not specialness.
mm,
Um, I now believe that everybody is special, but no one is more special than another person,
yeah.
and I feel like, um, there was an unhealthy relationship with, uh, others who did not look the same as you, when the teaching was that we treat everyone with kindness and as if they're our brother or sister. So there was this hypocrisy that I couldn't live with, really.
Yeah.
Um, and then just on the like realization front, like the summer solstice festivals that we had, celebrations that we had in New Mexico and Florida. Um, I always hated it there, to be perfectly honest. The altitude, the dryness, the lack of nutrition, like, it was all a problem. And I realized that I was really pissed off about it.
Mm.
So, that's a conversation that I've had with my parents, and they've apologized, and I think they're amazing. We're all on the same page about how screwed up things were
Mm.
and about the neglect that happened. Um, and like, I came out a good person, essentially. So I can't fault the whole thing. But I can criticize the poor behavior.
Yeah. You had a different experience that I know about. Was it just high school that you did in the Bay Area? Were you like more participatory in the Khalsa schools and stuff like that earlier on,
I
or?
I never went to school in India. I
Right.
always went to school in the Bay Area, um, which is really great because I think I would have been suicidal if I had gone to India. Like
Yeah.
I either would have become, well, I would have become like a lot of my peers, which is angry, depressed, and possibly physically violent. Like it. I saw that among quite a few people, and I know a lot of my peers have talked about that happening to them.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, I'm really grateful that I was never sent.
Yeah. I mean, it seems like by comparison, you got quite a bit more parenting than a lot of the kids in 3HO, right?
Yeah, I mean, I lived apart from the ashram, so
Mm-hmm.
we were always a little independent. We went to services on Sundays and participated in the community, but um, we definitely had our own lives. And my parents played in orchestras and musicals and
Mm-hmm.
ensembles, and I played in youth orchestras, and so we were definitely interacting with the broader local community and not just 3HO, not just Kundalini Yoga.
Yeah. Yeah. That was a really difficult thing for me to get over, and I didn't grow up in, obviously, in the Kundalini Yoga 3HO community, but the dissonance between how I felt about something and how I was supposed to feel about something. Like you're talking about, like summer solstice. So I would go to summer solstice, and I didn't go when I was a kid, obviously, but starting in my 20s, really hard time the first time. Marriage time was okay. Pregnant, oh my gosh, that was horrible. So every time I'd go, I'd be like, I'm never going back. That was the last time. It was so awful. But then you're like supposed to keep doing it. And it's
Right,
like, well, you may have not liked it, but it was really good for you.
right, right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think every individual taking control over being the barometer for what's good for us and what's not,
Yeah.
it takes the supposed tos out of everything. And, you know, I think it's a good lesson to learn. It's unfortunate when it comes with a ton of pain, but,
Yeah.
um, and in certain cases, like actual crime and abuse, that's
Right.
not okay.
Right.
Um, but yeah, it's like we all have to know, and hopefully will know, that only we as individuals know what feels good and what doesn't feel good, and that needs to be the priority rather than appeasing a community that knows nothing about you.
Right.
And I think that's maybe the biggest takeaway about all of this for me is essentially that I now distrust most teachers who put themselves in positions of being teachers. And
Mhm.
it's something that I'm really conscious of in my social media and, being a public figure. It's like I might have some thoughts about stuff and I might try to make it sound pretty, but ultimately I'm not telling anyone to do anything. I
Mhm.
really care that I'm not telling people what to do. It's not my business.
Mhm.
And I think I'm a perfect example of so many people along the road have told me, you should do this, you should do this. And I'm only going to do the things that I want to do ultimately.
Mhm.
Um, and I think the more we can mind our own business and let people be themselves, uh, the happier everyone's going to be.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
it's enough to tend to my own crap, honestly.
I think the grand illusion is like when you're feeling a sense of not being in control of your own life, right? It's like, oh, but if everyone else could just act a certain way for me, then I would feel like I was in control of my life. But yeah, it doesn't work because of what you were just saying, and it won't work out. Yeah.
Exactly. And, forget control over your own life. Like, that's hopeless. I think. I mean,
I agree.
I can go to sleep, have a weird dream, and wake up having been influenced by some part of my brain figuring out some stuff.
Mhm.
And I can have a crappy day after that. Was that under my control? Like, and honestly, I'm not sure that anyone knows any better about how to take care of the things that I'm thinking than I do,
No.
because I'm thinking them, only I'm feeling them, and words are again woefully inaccurate when we're trying to um, express a feeling. So back to the music, right? Because it's just like, here's a feeling, experience it. I'm not gonna tell you what it is. Just like,
Hmm.
this is what it was for me, but you have your experience. That's great. I
Yeah.
love that. That
Yeah.
feels like the perfect remedy for everything that I've experienced in my life.
Yeah. That's nice. I feel like musicians don't get asked, what does this mean, as much as possibly like painters or photographers or stuff, you know?
Yeah, and I think it's for good reason. I mean, I feel like everyone should everyone's going to have their experience with art that they have.
Hmm.
And just because I wrote a song about, in this case, my son passing, doesn't mean that that is what the song's about.
Hmm.
Because Bogdan and Mati didn't have that experience. That
Hmm.
was what brought a feeling for me. So, and then every fan who listens to it, everybody who listens to it is going to have it hit them at a certain time in their life. And the poignancy of that is so much more important than my thoughts about what it means.
Yeah.
Who knows what Beethoven thought about what his Fifth Symphony meant? Like,
Yeah.
whatever, it's just great that he made it,
Yeah.
essentially.
Yeah. Totally. Yeah. I I was thinking about that actually. It's interesting because we only have the when we're comparing music, when we're comparing like Beethoven to what you've just done, for example. I mean, obviously a lot of differences, but the main thing is like, I don't know how Beethoven played it. So we don't actually know what it sounded like or how it felt, right? Because
Right.
it's just notes on paper at this point, and everybody gets to decide how that sounds.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
It's
And
really
then,
hard to say.
you know, we thank goodness we have them as notes on a paper. Like, that's
Yeah.
amazing. Um, and toward the end of his life, he was deaf and almost blind too. So who knows if his interpretation of what he was hearing inside his head is what came out on paper.
Right.
It works
Yeah.
for me, but he was going through all sorts of stuff, and same for any composer. It's approximate, and hopefully we
Hmm.
can gesture in the right direction
Yeah.
that causes a feeling in someone else.
On that note, haha, do you anticipate being able to somewhat recreate these compositions live, or are they just going to sort of become something else, do you think, when you do? Have you done them live?
We went back into that cave and actually did a studio session within the cave. I brought all my gear down there and we lit candles, and it was amazing.
Wow.
Um, and we took the framework for them,
Uh-huh.
for some of them, and did different versions of them. So I think there's possibility in the sense that the structure is what matters, and
Uh-huh.
the motifs are possible to recreate. But just like jazz, there's so much room. Essentially, they're chord progressions with a little bit of melody,
Yeah.
and then it can be improvised on top of. So I think there's definitely room for new versions. I'm not sure how interested in recreating them Mati and Bogdan are.
Mm,
Uh, I know they're really interested in just creating new things.
right.
Um, and they're coming out with some really great stuff. I'm helping them with mixing and mastering those. And then I hope that we can record, another chunk of tunes together, uh, sort of the way that we did as well. But I think it's always going to evolve. We're always looking for the next thing.
Yeah. Yeah. I feel like once I'm done recording something, or even like when I start, I'm already kind of done with that material. So,
Yeah, exactly. I
like,
mean, I have this EP coming out on December 3rd, but I'm thinking about the next EP and
right.
how I'm recording that and words because it's singer-songwriter stuff. So it's like, yeah, I'm in the future right now.
So you are going to be writing, I sort of missed that. I mean, I heard you say it, but I didn't make the little mental connection. So you are writing songs, or is somebody else writing songs and you're singing them?
No, I'm writing songs. I
Okay.
do have a couple
With words.
collaborators that I'm working with for those.
Uh-huh.
But no, I have some song ideas.
Yeah.
It's just the weight, the gravitas of having to do a song like that feels bigger. Um,
Okay.
the this EP with Mati and Bogdan, like it has a vulnerability and a weight to it that is perfect. Um, but yeah, suddenly when you're the one singing, as you know, it becomes very personal, and you're the one singing those words, and they're your words, and so I look forward to it getting easier. But
Mm,
yeah, I'm excited about it. I know it's going to be great, and I just have to coach myself through that a little bit.
yeah. So is that stuff, do you compose on guitar when you compose?
Guitar or
I
piano.
know.
Sometimes a melody will just pop in my head, and it's without an instrument in my hands, and I'll do a voice memo and then figure out
Yeah.
the chords and everything when I get to an instrument.
Yeah. That's cool. I
Yeah.
was thinking when you were talking about how Bogdan and Mati just kind of want to move on. Um, you've heard that Joni Mitchell live album, The Miles of Isles, where she makes this joke about like everybody's requesting songs. Everybody's like yelling out, requesting songs. And she's like, one of the things, one of the things that's amazing about being a painter, because she's also a painter, is like you paint it and it's done. nobody
Yeah.
nobody asks Van Gogh like paint a starry night again, man.
Right.
I always love
Right.
that.
Yeah. That's very true. We're the ones who have to
Do it
put our own
again.
record on repeat. Exactly. Though didn't who was it? There was a painter. Oh, you know what it was? There's a Radio Lab episode that I love that talks about Maurice Ravel, who wrote the Bolero,
Mhm.
which is this 17-ish minute piece with the same melody the entire time, and he just changes which instruments are playing that melody. It's so repetitive, but it's incredible. It's like a masterclass in orchestration, and just gets to this big crescendo at the end and then falls apart. Um, it turns out that he had some sort of degenerative brain disease or some sort of thing that creates the compulsion to find a motif and create over and over and over again on that.
Oh
And there was a
wow.
woman who had not been a painter but took up painting and started painting strawberries. And she just kept painting strawberries over and over and over again, and they became this amazing, beautiful thing. It turns out that she ended up having that same illness that Ravel had.
Huh.
So it's fascinating because sometimes, and I actually think that this music is a perfect example, there's a beauty to repetition. And, having done mantra music for so long, like you almost go into a trance when things repeat like that. And I think that's really beautiful. But there's something, again, about the performative aspect of it where it's like someone else is expecting it of you. I think when it's self-motivated and we can find the joy in it ourselves or the catharsis in it ourselves, it becomes less of a chore. But when it feels like it's an outside demand, that's when things can get a little tenuous.
I wonder if that's an introvert extrovert type of perception too, because I totally feel that, and I'm definitely an introvert, and I wonder if you identify as introvert. Okay.
Introvert with extrovert capabilities.
Yeah, you're not antisocial.
Right.
Yeah, but I wonder because people who do enjoy playing, I feel like they get a certain energy from the interaction that it doesn't feel like a demand. To me, it does feel like a demand. I've never liked it when people have been like, play something, sing something. I'm like, so I can prove to you that I can, like, I just don't like how this feels.
Right, exactly. And it sometimes doesn't mean that, but it's just
no,
but it
for
feels that
sure.
way. It really does.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it comes across sometimes as look at me when I want it to be look at this, listen to this. Like the work is not me. I helped create it, but I'm not the thing to put on the pedestal, essentially. It's more like, isn't music cool? Isn't art cool?
Yeah.
Look how amazing we all are for having created things, essentially.
Yeah.
But I really resonate with that. I don't like doing things on demand.
Yeah.
when it's in front of people,
Which I think is one of the major appeals of the studio. Maybe you agree. To me, it's like, and the home studio particularly, it's like whenever I feel like it, I can go play some music.
Yeah, I don't even maybe go that far. But it's full time for me, so it's
For
like
sure, yeah.
I don't have much free time to go and play music. But again, it's like I don't know that I get a whole lot of satisfaction from going and playing music. I think I'm finding that my satisfaction comes in the experimenting with material. And it did feel like painting with Matti and Bogdan live. It did feel like that, a laboratory environment and ceremonial environment rather than a performative one. So I think that kind of sums up what we were trying to do too, which is we didn't want it to be performative. We didn't want it to be showing off. We wanted it to be very introverted, very introspective, while also being cathartic and emotional.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Ramdas. Especially, I know you mentioned you're like the busiest person in the world, so I really value you coming on here. I feel very honored that you lent me some of your time for doing this podcast. Would you tell everyone about the many ways that they can keep in touch with you? Your Instagram feed, by the way, right now is like really awesome. So definitely tell people your handle and your website and all that good stuff.
Yeah, well, thank you so much for having me. I would talk to you in a heartbeat anytime. I'm so happy to do this whenever, regardless of my schedule. And y'all can find me on Instagram, Ramdas Music, Ramdas with 2 S's, like the other white Ramdas. And I'm also Ramdas Music on Facebook, at Ramdas on Twitter. And then if you want to find my music, it's on all of the streaming services under Ramdas. The most recent EP, which will be releasing December 3rd, is called And Now He Has Wings. And that is with my collaborators, Aware. And you can find that on Spotify, on Apple Music, Deezer, Pandora, or any of the other services, YouTube. And I'm sure we'll post links for all of that too.
Yeah, for sure. Oh, I have to ask, did you end up giving the other Ramdas because I know his people had asked you to like give up your handles at some point?
I did not. They I didn't.
Okay, good for you. I was just wondering if that's why there's a music after it.
Actually, you know, that's a good question. I don't remember what happened with Instagram, but with Twitter, I'm still at Ramdas.
Holding
And
strong.
I get all sorts of people who are quoting the other Ramdas and tagging me. And I want to say something sometimes, but I really appreciate that they got something out of what he had to say.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. It's not
but
I mean, if you're going to be confused with someone, that's not an awful one. So,
yeah, I'm just a lot younger and, you know, still living and stuff.
oh, he died. I forgot
Yeah,
that
he
he
passed
died.
away
Oh,
last year, the year before.
oh, okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. So I'm
The
the
living
living
Ram
Ram
Dass.
Dass. Yeah.
Okay. Well, thank you, the living Ram Dass.
Sure.
All
No
right.
problem.
Thanks so much. And thanks so much, you guys, for listening. We will see you we will catch you in the next episode. All right. Bye.
Take care.